This morning, after weeks of back and forth, Senate Republicans have finally unveiled their proposed changes to President Trump's self-titled Big Beautiful Bill, including cuts to Medicaid and eliminating some clean energy tax credits. The announcement comes as a new KFF survey finds that Americans generally not so in favor of the bill, with nearly 2/3 of the American public expressing their disapproval. CNN's chief data analyst, Harry Enton, is with me now. So where is support for this mega bill?
You know, I'm really surprised when I look at polling data. I look at it every day. But the amount of disapproval for this bill, holy cow, my goodness gracious. And, you know, you mentioned the KFF poll. We're talking about 29 points underwater on the net favorable rating. But that matches the Quinnipiac University poll from last week when it was 26 points underwater. Oh, my God, you need Greg Louganis to get that far underwater. And, I mean, we're talking about a negative 41 net favorability rating among independents in the center of the electorate. You rarely ever see pieces of legislation or proposed pieces of legislation as unpopular as this. But here you see it in two polls, 26 points underwater and 29 points underwater. No good.
All right, what about the GOP? Because we have seen some pushback from some lawmakers, and we saw that, I don't know, nuclear reaction from Elon Musk about this bill. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, there is a large chunk of the Republican Party that is not in favor of this bill. So this is the GOP with an unfavorable view of this bill. And what we see here is, look at this, 23% are opposed, have an unfavorable rating of the Big Beautiful Bill. Now, to put that in some perspective, Donald Trump's unfavorable rating with the GOP is 9%. So this is more than double. All of a sudden, you're taking a huge chunk of that MAGA base, of that Republican base that is turned against this bill. It is not just Elon Musk. It is not just Ron Johnson, the Senate Republican from Wisconsin. It is a large chunk of the Republican base, is large, double the percentage that have an unfavorable view of Donald Trump, have an unfavorable view of the Big Beautiful Bill. And I will note that in the KFF poll, the unfavorable view, get this, 36%. You rarely ever see anything that Donald Trump backs get that high of an unfavorable view among Republicans. But here it is with the Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah, and there's a very small margin there, so they're going to have to work out these details. Give us some comparison. 2017, we saw a bill that had Trump tax cuts in it. What does the support look like compared to that?
Yeah, you know, that wasn't that popular back in the day. It was a minus 17 net favorable rating. But here, what do we see with the Big Beautiful Bill on the aggregate? Minus 28 points. So this is far more unpopular than those tax cuts were back in 2017. And remember, Republicans lost the House in 2018. So if this is the Big Beautiful Bill, it may be a Big Beautiful Bill for Democrats if it passes, because they'll have a big, beautiful night come midterm night of 2026.
In my sad math, that is almost double.
Yes.
There. Almost.
It's not good. It's not good.
All right, Harry Enton.
It has been, Sarah, and top Senate Republicans are meeting some resistance from within their own party to Trump's economic agenda that they're trying to push through on the Hill, which could potentially complicate that July 4th goal that they have set to send this bill to President Trump's desk. Now, in the hours after the Senate Finance Committee released this proposal, we heard from Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who said that he is currently a no because this does not do enough to cut spending, and he poured some cold water about that July 4th deadline. Now, to run through a bit of what this proposal includes, it is keeping the state and local tax deduction cap at $10,000. That's going to be an issue with some Republicans in the House who had wanted this to be at $40,000. There are also deeper cuts to Medicaid. And as you mentioned, Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri is one of those who has taken issue with the changes to the provider tax. He has specifically warned about the impacts that this could have on rural hospitals in his and other states. Now, even as there are some lawmakers expressing some concerns about this proposal, the Senate Majority Leader John Thune has said that there is still a lot more work to do, but he's optimistic about that July 4th deadline. Take a listen.
This is a piece of legislation that we need to get across the finish line. It's harder in the Senate. We have different rules that we have to comply with than they do in the House, and we're in the process of working through it. But in the next couple of weeks, I expect to get it done. There's a lot of work between now and the July 4th break. But that's absolutely right. We're going to get this done, and it'll be out of the Senate, and hopefully we'll get it on the President's desk before the 4th of July.
Now, Thune can only lose support from 3 Senate Republicans, so there's a lot of questions about how this will move forward in the Senate, but they are hoping to potentially start holding votes late next week to try to send this over to the House, which then would still need to be approved if there are any changes.
Arlette Saenz, thank you so much for your reporting there on Capitol Hill for us.
Senate Republicans have revealed their version of President Trump's spending and tax bill. The Finance Committee's framework makes significant changes to that measure that narrowly passed the House. And one point of contention, deeper cuts to Medicaid through the so-called provider tax, which is how states raise money to pay for their portion of the program. Senator Josh Hawley says it would effectively defund hospitals. Democrats are echoing that concern.
I've actually been traveling into red states to talk to the people there about what they're going to lose. Missouri is going to lose 400,000 people will be kicked off Medicaid's rolls. I talked to the National Hospital Association. 30% of our safety net hospitals, most of which are in red states, will shut down if these Medicaid cuts go through.
Pat is back. Chuck, I want to go to you. Late night couch mentioning Missouri. In terms of messaging, it's pretty clear what's happening here, saying, look, red states, look, Republican voters, this is hitting you. Should we expect to see more of this?
I think so. And what you're going to see is messaging centered around rural hospitals. They take the brunt of this. And it's one of those issues that Democrats and Republicans can come together on. In rural America, healthcare is hard to find. I grew up on a farm in East Texas. We had to drive 18 miles to go to the nearest hospital. There's a lot of other folks that are like that. And Democrats see it as a place where they could bring in some of these rural Republicans and say, like, hey, this is too much.
Is that remotely possible, Charlie Dent?
Well, look, the politics of Medicaid have changed a lot since 2017. Republicans recognize that many of their base voters are on Medicaid and benefit from it, probably more so than the Democrats, and particularly in these rural areas Chuck just mentioned. So I think that the Senate's going to have a tough time enacting these Medicaid changes.
But there have now been so many thousands of protests involving so many millions of Americans. Now I think it's time to start having a national conversation of a different type, right? The strategy and the character of the opposition to Trump is not only self-evident as the most important story in the country, I think it's finally being recognized as the most important story in the country, which is nice. And, you know, you have the president clearly just fundamentally politically unable to contend with the depth and breadth of feeling against him, right? So these must be paid protesters or invaders from somewhere else, or they must all be violent criminals or whatever. No, actually, this is St. Louis, right? This is America. No kings, yes, queens, right? Like that. This is just us. It's who we are, and this is how we feel about you. I mean, this is Joplin, Missouri. This is Louisville, Kentucky, where thousands of people turned out. This is McHenry, Illinois. This is High Point, North Carolina. It is literally everywhere in this country, Americans in surprising numbers, in surprising places, turning out again and again and again and again to say, no, nope, we are not doing this. You are not taking over our country and turning us into a dictatorship. You are not going to be a king here. And so with all that proof in the pudding, right, with all of that evidence of where we are, it's now sort of time, if we haven't had it already, it is now time to really have a serious national conversation about where this all goes. Because this is not just like the resistance to Trump, right? Like this is the opposition to Trump. This is the other side. And if we're thinking about the two sides of this fight, well, politically, we're at a point where Trump, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but as a political figure, he looks sad and small, right? Nobody came to his $45 million military birthday party. He is a laughingstock on the world stage. He's being treated at the G7 right now like he's Putin's intern. The White House just announced tonight that Trump is coming home early from the G7 meeting tonight after so embarrassing himself there today. I mean, this is a president whose signature economic policy, his supposed tariff policy, is a punchline even among Republicans. I mean, someday, 30 years from now, the whole lecture hall full of Econ 101 students is going to laugh out loud when the professor gets out the chalk and writes taco on the chalkboard and has to explain what the acronym TACO meant in the Trump years for his signature economic policy that he thought would work so well for him, both politically and economically. It is a punchline. I mean, this is a president who appointed a madman to be the nation's health secretary, and who in turn, he has just put like a QAnon conspiracy chat room in charge of the nation's vaccine schedule. This is a president who is selling coins and gold trinkets with his face on them from the White House. This is a president who can't persuade the First Lady to live with him. This is a president whose supposed best friend says he should be impeached and, by the way, is in the Epstein files. I mean, this is a president whose approval ratings are more underwater than any other president ever at this point in his term. He has already rushed right to the part where he tries to turn the military against the civilian population, where he tries to turn the force of the American military against the American people. And that is something that neither the military nor the people have an appetite for, and he is going to learn that soon enough. He has rushed right to the end, because he has no idea how to play cards against opposition to him that is this big, this sustainable, this broad, and this correct. He hasn't done anything as president that would win anyone over to his side. And the number of people who voted for him or supported him otherwise, who are now regretting it, grows by the day. And they don't just grow privately, they grow in the headlines every day. Everybody against him is getting stronger and more confident. Everybody with him is starting to get a little worried about how long they can stay with him as they see their numbers dwindle.
Trump's bill keeps failing and the opposition keeps growing, and it's a vicious cycle. People sense weakness in Trump, so they protest more. And because the protests are working, people in politics see Trump as weak. This goes back to Trump at the depths. Look, he came out of it because of, frankly, the American people being wrong. I'm not a politician. Politicians can't say this, right? They can't say the voters are, they say the voters are never wrong. No, the voters are wrong. Voters are wrong. I'm not even a huge fan of Harris. I'm not even a huge fan of Kamala. I'm much further left than her. The American voters were wrong. 100%. 100%. But when Trump was at his worst, you saw the opposition to him rising, right? Like, Trump loses in 2021. That gives some people cause, or in 2020, that gives some people cause to stand up to him. Standing up to him leads to more legal trouble. The legal trouble leads to more Republicans turning on him. And then at the midterm, remember this, there was that moment, brief as it was, where it really did look like Ron DeSantis was going to overtake him. And in some Republican primary polls, right, they were tied, like nationwide, within the margin of error each other. It could have been an actual competitive race. And what we're seeing here is the start of a similar thing, except this time I think Trump's not going to bounce out of it. He looks weak. So you went out and protested. And because of that, now some Republicans are emboldened to stand up to him, because he doesn't look invincible. He doesn't. And so he looks even weaker. And what does that do? It encourages people to say, the tyrant isn't invincible. I'm going to stand up. Remember, right when he won again, people didn't protest. It wasn't like 2017. But very quickly, things broke down for Trump. And this vicious cycle is going to continue to swirl him down the toilet.